Today's episode comes by special request from you, the viewers. Today I'm going to show you the rarest records in my record collection. Welcome everyone to another episode of Todd's Turntable Talk. And before we get started, like always, I want to remind you to please make sure and hit that subscribe button as well as the bell notification to let you know each and every time a new episode drops here on our channel. So I've had people write in with some suggestions and things they'd like to see, and a few people have asked to see the rarest records in my collection. Now, rare is kind of a subjective term, but not completely. Some of these are actually extremely rare. Others are just ones I've never seen out in public that I happened to stumble across and haven't seen since, and haven't heard of people that have seen them, but I don't know if they're actually really rare or not, but it's just rare to me. So I'm going to try and combine those and be as specific about that as I can through the process. I'm going to kind of go in order of sort of rare to the rarest I have. First up is a legendary record that I managed to find a first pressing mint condition copy of years ago, and it has stayed in that condition ever since. And that is Ray Charles' Modern Sounds in Country and Western. Now, Modern Sounds in Country and Western music was a very huge album for Ray Charles. It featured songs like Bye Bye Love, You Don't Know Me, Born to Lose, I Can't Stop Loving You. It's a really great album. And this here is a first pressing of it. Went and looked on the, you can find that out by the markings on the inside circle of the vinyl. Put that in Discogs, and they tell you all the different things to look for to find out if it's indeed a first pressing, and this is. It is a great album, and one that I'm pretty tickled that I have a first pressing of in my collection. Next is an album that I fell in love with years ago. My friend Tim Freeman turned me on to this, and another friend of mine, Ashley Peacock, ended up finding two in a record store in a different state. I can't recall where he was when he found them, but we had been looking for this on vinyl forever. Couldn't find it online at the time, never saw it in a record store, and then he came across two in the same store, and that is the Neville Brothers album Yellow Moon, produced by Daniel Lanois, who also is a famous singer-songwriter in his own right, also produces great artists like U2. He did the Emmylou Harris Wrecking Ball album. He's a phenomenal producer. And this album is just incredible. It's amazing New Orleans style, bluesy funk music. It's just great. I've never seen it in the wild before or since, but I'm really happy to have a copy of it. Okay, next is promo copies. Now, these are records that are sent to a radio station or once in a while to a record store back in the day ahead of the release of the actual album, so they could spin it in the store and people could hear it and hear what's coming, or, you know, so radio stations had it to play singles. So I own two different ones. First one is, we were just talking about him a second ago, Daniel Lanois. This is his debut solo album, Acadie. I think that's how you say it. The radio station scribbled their call letters on here, but I can't quite read it. But if you look down here, see if I can get it on the camera, there is this gold stamp there. And what that says is, lent for promotional use only, any sale or unauthorized transfer is prohibited and void, subject to return upon demand by owner. Acceptance of this record constitutes agreement to the above. Well, I bought it in an indie record store in Cincinnati, so whoops. But it is a great album, and on the back, the DJ or whoever even crossed out songs. I'm guessing these are ones they weren't going to play on the radio, but this is pretty rare. I've never seen this anywhere else. And coming across promo copies is definitely a harder thing to come by. Next, I'm a humongous Billy Joel fan. I think I've covered that in a couple other episodes. He is the one of only two artists that I have the complete discography. I literally have every vinyl Billy Joel has ever put out in my collection. Him and Simon and Garfunkel are the only two that I have a complete discography of as it stands right now. This is Billy Joel's first album before he signed to Sony and Columbia. So this is an indie release. This is his album Cold Spring Harbor. This has the song She's Got Away, Everybody Loves You Now. The funny thing about this, when this album was released, it was mastered at the wrong speed. So the songs are kind of a little faster and Billy sounds a little off. But this is another one. Now this doesn't have the promo sticker anywhere, the stamp anywhere on the record. But when you pull the record out, another thing they used to do, sometimes they'd be white label. So there wouldn't be anything on it except for maybe the artist name and on a white label. This one, if you look on the logo, on the label here, it says DJ copy in one of the corners. That's the same thing. It's still a promo release. This was intended just for radio stations to play whatever the single was they were pushing from the album at the time. I found this in a more of a flea market-y record store. We used to have a couple of them here in town. They were called Jelly Beans. And the big one burned down a few years ago. And I found this in their satellite store, which also doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And man, did I have to have a poker face when I went up there, because I didn't want to let it slip that this was a promo and they might try to charge me more money for it. So I was really happy to find that. Next, this album has been in another episode, but it's also very rare in my collection, and that is an original pressing from 1991 of U2's Achtung Baby. This is, like I said, original. Vinyl wasn't a big thing by this time. It was almost obsolete, but a few bands still would press vinyl, and this is a pretty rare album in that sense. To find this online and get this exact version, you're going to be spending upwards of $100 to $150. It's a fairly rare record. I rarely play it, as I have the remastered reissue from about a year or two ago. So that's the one I spin when I want to listen to this on vinyl, but also pretty rare. Next is an album I got from my good friend Brett Fortney, the Hitman, who's been on this show before. And this is a first pressing of Michael Jackson's Bad. Now, this is actually harder to find. They have reissues they've done since. They've done second, third pressings of this. The only way you can find out that this is a first pressing, well, there's two ways. One is you can look at the numbers on the inside and, research it. But also, the songs are different on this compared to every other release afterwards. The biggest example is the song I Just Can't Stop Loving You, the duet on here. The reissue and the second pressings and everything ever since, there's a big talking intro where Michael has this whole monologue before the song starts. That is only on the first pressings of this. And every subsequent pressing, they have removed that completely. There's also little tweaks they've made, the songs like Smooth Criminal and Bad, that are different on the first pressing as opposed to the other ones. So this is a more rare record than the other ones, but still pretty cool to have. Thanks, Hitman. And then probably the rarest album I have out of everything is also a Billy Joel album. This album was never pressed on vinyl in the United States. It was only pressed overseas. This is his album River of Dreams. This album comes from Spain. Again, my good friend Brett Fortney found this on Discogs for me. And, I gave him some money. He ordered it for me. This is the rarest record I have. You cannot find this in the States, period. You will never see this in an indie record store. You will never see this in a big box store. This is something you can only get online, or if the record store happened to find an import and bring it to the store to sell it. You will never find this anywhere you look for it. I know Billy has been reissuing his albums, and I'm sure eventually this will come out on vinyl again, which will be cool. But until then, the only way you can find this is to go online on places like eBay and Discogs and try to search it out that way. It's funny because the quality of the covers, it's really flimsy cardboard, and it's been loved, as you can see here. It's not supposed to come apart like that, but it was worth it to have this record in the collection because honestly, being a completionist, the Billy Joel collection wasn't going to be finished unless I found this, especially once I learned it did exist in vinyl, just not in the United States. So this is the rarest record I own. So that's going to do it for my rare albums. That's the stuff that I have that are kind of the crown jewels as far as the harder to come by stuff. I definitely hope you all have enjoyed this and seeing the different records. What are some of the rarest records you have? Leave it in the comments below. Maybe share a picture in there if it's possible. I'm not sure if you can put pictures in the comments on YouTube, now that I think about it. But either way, let us know what your rarest records are. And if there's any other things you'd like to see on the show, please leave it in the comments below. And I'll do my best to create as much content as possible addressing all the subjects you'd like to see on this show. And we will see you all next time for another episode of Todd's Turntable Talk.